everyone, it's Ross Anderson here from the Global Fine Wine and Video Podcast, and this is edition number 1, and we are super lucky today for edition 1 to be joined by a legend of the Australian wine industry, that being Mr. Philip Shaw, and coming to us from Orange and his new project, Hoosegg. Now, the aim of these shows, and there's going to be a lot of them coming your way soon, is as always to inform, educate and entertain you on all things wine and show you the personalities behind the labels that are making your favorite drops. And it's going to be Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, America and Canada. So lots of amazing winemakers coming your way soon. So please stay tuned for this. But without any further ado, let's introduce Philip into the mix. I'm just going to add him into the stream. Good morning, Mr. Shaw. How are you, sir?
Yeah.
Are you well?
Yeah, excellent.
Excellent, excellent. I think I was told not to mention the rain, so I'm not going to mention the fact that it's absolutely raining everywhere in New South Wales at the moment. But how are things down in Orange, sir? Are you well? And everything's well at Hoosegg?
Well, it's not raining here. We've got the sun shining. Yeah, it's gorgeous. We haven't had rain, any significant rain for some time, which is, again, gorgeous because we had nearly 200 wet days last year.
Wow. That's crazy. And Philip, tell me, Hoosegg and the pandemic in the last 2 years, how's consumer confidence going with Hoosegg and your experience in this at the moment?
Oh, things are coming back now. Really, up until probably even a week ago, I think probably the worst it's been. I think everybody relaxed just before Christmas and thought it was all over, and then Omicron came along and that really knocked people, and it was quite noticeable in January and through a fair bit of February that people were confused by the whole thing, and sales really dropped badly. But no, you can see people were getting a bit excited, and being in Sydney earlier this week and Tasmania, yeah, people were changing. Yeah, it's quite
different. Great. Yeah, we've noticed it's been really quiet in the trade here as well. We're hoping that March is the start of the year, really. So, fingers crossed. I'm intrigued by Orange. I must confess, haven't been to Orange, even though I've lived in Sydney for 20 years, which is shocking on my behalf, and I will remedy that soon. Tell me about the region. Why Orange? I mean, I know you have a long affiliation with Orange, with your other brand, Philip Shaw, and now Hoosegg. What makes Orange so unique to you?
Well, I was looking in Victoria and Tasmania for a long time prior to making a decision to come here. I had a lot to do with Burgundy before that, and I had a lot of Burgundians work for me over the years. And I was looking for a region climatically similar to Burgundy because my main interest was Chardonnay and Pinot. So I was looking for a climate that was very similar to Burgundy, not necessarily being the same as Burgundy, but they make pretty reasonable sort of Pinots and Chardonnay. So I thought, well, it's probably a good start. Orange is nearly identical climatic data as Burgundy. That's, in the end, was why I chose it. There was certainly looked in lots of other places, but I was guided really by the fact that they grew apples in this region. I knew climatically that was pretty similar to what we needed in climate. Anyway, and when I looked up all the data, yeah, it was very similar. So came here. I used to fly over Orange. I'd never been to Orange, and we were just circling and looked at it. Yeah, looked pretty interesting, and came over. And actually, from my data, I was able to find very quickly a place. It took me 12 months to convince a guy to sell, but Orange is different than Burgundy. Burgundy is because of latitude. We're because of altitude, climate. We're at around 900 metres in altitude, and that gives us a cool climate.
And how long have you been in Orange with your various entities?
Well, originally, when I started looking, it was probably 34 years ago. It was about 88. we bought and started planting in 89. So over 30 years now.
And let's let that lead into pre-coming to Orange. You were located in South Australia?
Yeah, prior to that, I was in the Hunter and then South Australia and then here. So my plan was to wait 12 years before I started making wine myself, but ended up going to South Australia and ended up being 15 years.
Fantastic.
So I was trying to get the vineyard mature before I started making wine.
Let's look at Hoosegg in relation to distance from Sydney. What is that distance there from Sydney to you? Is it around about 4 hours drive, 4 and a bit hours drive?
Yeah, it's 200 kilometres roughly as the crow flies. And because you're going through the Blue Mountains, it takes a while longer. So it's, and if you drive reasonably fast, you might do it in 3 hours.
Not something that we recommend you
and
do.
And the police don't pick you up, yeah.
No comment, sir. This shot on screen now, is this the entire Hoosegg property, or are there other vineyards that are not seen here?
We have other vineyards, but Hoosegg only comes from this particular vineyard, which is about 47 hectares. A vineyard, the property's bigger.
So here are some vineyard shots coming up now. Is this one of the main vineyards?
Yeah, that's obviously in winter, or vines are not dead, they're sleeping. And that's Mount Canobolas in the background. Mount Canobolas is about 1,400 metres high. That's good walking.
And here's another shot here. The dog, what's your dog's name?
That's Luca.
That's Luca.
Luca's an Irish setter. She still hangs around. She's nearly 15, but
she's I found some other photos sleeping, of Luca eating the fruit.
Not meant to eat grapes, but she does.
So, Philip, let's talk about the Global Fine Wine Challenge, which Hoosegg entered the Cabernet Franc into, which was held in late November of last year. Here is the wine in question, the Jade Moon Cab Franc 2017, which picked up a gold medal. And we were having a quick chat just before we hit record about the Cabernet Franc class. Cabernet Franc became its own entity, its own class this year for the first time. It dominated the section it sat in, which was other reds for, I'd say, the last 5-6 years, especially when Canada joined the fold. And the Canadians, obviously, from the Okanagan and parts of Niagara, are making some world-class Cabernet Francs due to their climate. And it became a point where it was starting to dominate to a point where nothing else got a look in. So we made the decision to move Cabernet Franc into its own class, and we had about 25 to 30 entries, which was great for its first run, and some great results for Australia. And I was saying to you earlier on as well that it's interesting that episodes 1, which is yourself, and 2, which we're filming this afternoon, with 3 drops, and here's 3 drops from Geograph, from Mount Barker in WA, 2 Australian Cabernet Francs for episodes 1 and 2, which is it's amazing. I find it's a really good result. Talk to me a bit about Cabernet Franc and your interest in the varietal.
Well, when I came here, my main interest was Chardonnay and Pinot. But when you come into a new region, and it is a new region not just for me, it was a new region for growing grapes. There was a history going back, but it was mainly because of English settlers, it was mainly grapes that they grew for eating rather than that. So apples and cherries and eating grapes were sort of a thing that was growing here. So climatically, it has that. But we look at 3 or 4 factors of why a region's what it is. But really, there's probably in a vineyard site 1,000 reasons why that it produces that style of wine exactly. So When I came here, it looked ideal for Chardonnay and Pinot, but I planted a lot of other varieties with the idea if they didn't work, we'll just graft them over or pull them out and replant. So I planted and Cab Franc and Merlot and Shiraz and that I planted, not unsure of how they perform. Initially, Pinot and Chardonnay came up very quickly, quite suitable, but the Bordeaux varieties didn't look that good. They were a bit green and thin. But with a bit of manipulation, with age of vines, stopping irrigation, taking off crop, etc., they begin to show some really strong signs. By the time I didn't look, I may be just threatening that we're going to graft them over, but also encourage them to perform a bit different. So what exactly was the reasons why they started to perform well? I think it's probably a combination of all those things. We go to a lot of trouble with for all this range. We bring the crop back to for that one, about 3 tonnes a hectare, so very low cropping. Stopped irrigation, spent a lot of time leaf plucking, and so a lot of work in the vineyard itself before we pick the fruit. So, Merlot and Cab Franc are looking very promising from this region, showing really great signs.
And while we're talking about Cabernet Franc and potentially, or as an alternate variety, which I don't know if you agree it is or is not, but I'm keen to know your thoughts on the future of alternate varieties in Australia.
I think part of it's just journalism. You're always looking for something different. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of varieties that don't work, but I think Cab Franc and Merlot have got huge potential, and there's of course other varieties, depends on the region. In the warmer regions, there's certainly other varieties that are beginning to show really well.
We talked to
I think people are becoming more adventurous and looking for different things. So a part of that is varietal difference too.
We noticed that when we talked to a lot of the wineries down in South Australia, particularly, and the Adelaide Hills, again in particular, there's a lot of those alternate varieties going in there. The guys at Hahndorf Hill, Art Wine, lots of Spanish and Austrian varieties, and I just find it's interesting, and I like watching things like that, and just set it as a benchmark and just monitor progress, and starting to see more Chenin coming out of Margaret River, a bit out of McLaren Vale, so things like that are always very interesting, and I like to keep a tab on them. But yeah, it's very interesting. Can you give us your highlights reel of your past 20 years, 30 years in the wine
Sorry?
industry? Can you give us your highlights reel of, say, the last 30 years in the wine industry? What are the highlights for you? I mean, you've had some significant highlights.
Probably the main thing has been working with companies that have grew and been very successful. And I don't look so much at show results and things like that, which I'm glad to get out of. I find them always an over challenge and sometimes disappointing. Sometimes the wines you think are the best end up being put aside by the ones that you weren't so happy with do extremely well, and you think, why in the hell was that? So my highlights over the time is probably where Rosemount was a huge highlight. See a winery go from about 20,000 cases to 6 million, and also the value of each wine going up quite considerably. Travelling, doing tasting, working with people like Mondavi and in the States, and working in Chile was an interesting, great venture. And starting this, of course, probably the biggest highlight was coming to Orange and starting this and bringing my sons involved, and then trying to move on, keep going. I'm still just starting.
And so let's keep on to that theme, Philip. What are your future plans with Hoosegg? Is it business as normal? Have you got some additional plans? Something that you're going to do?
Unfortunately, for the last 3 years, or this coming vintage, I won't pick anything because we've had a bad hailstorm in the particular blocks I was looking at. Last year we had too much rain for our late ripening reds, and that's our main wines. And the previous year we had smoke taint from the. So this year I'm actually bringing in fruit from Tasmania. I've been asked to make wines from Coal River. I said, oh, well, I'll do that provided that we can bring the fruit up here for this year and then review it after that. So we're bringing up fruit, but I still want to keep going here. So, yeah.
It sounds interesting, the Coal River project. Is it Chardonnay and Pinot, or you're not unable to say?
Yeah, just Chardonnay and Pinot.
And
I didn't want to make Chardonnay and Pinot from here, even though they're my main interest. I was certainly making Chardonnay, but not Pinot, because that's. I didn't want to clash with what we were doing ourselves with Philip Shore Wines.
That sounds really interesting. I look forward to seeing what comes out of the other end of that in a year or two. I want to talk about specifically the Jade Moon. And just going to pop it up on the screen here. So here it is here. So here's the information, 96 points from Alison Eiserman, MW, who's one of our judges. And then Andrea Pritzker. I mean, everyone loved this wine, 95-pointer. And Andrew Kayard, old-fashioned style, dark fruits, chocolatey textures, very well-made wine. I mean, there's some amazing feedback there, and it was really interesting and pleasing when we were preparing for this to look at that, because, you often think, oh, I hope there's no bad comments. That's going to be awkward. But, I mean, everyone's given it glowing reviews. How is the rest of the range? I mean, I'm going to pop that up on the screen as well. You make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You make 8 wines, maybe more, maybe less, but there's 8 listed on your website. Tell us a little bit about these 3 with the very quirky labels.
Yeah, we spent the Chardonnay is from American clones. It's always vineyards around that 30 plus years old now, and crop them back in this range to about 5 tonnes a hectare, so really low cropping. Spent a lot of time in the vineyard to get the fruit exactly right. Self-made up man's a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Shiraz and Cab Franc. Sorry for the slow reply, Rosé. It's normally a blend of those as well, but what we run off depends on berry size. I measure the berries or weigh the berries, and then depending on the size, I'll run a certain amount off to bring all the juice ratio the same. And that's how I make the rosé. I'm really after a very light pink colour, totally dry style. Chardonnay, it's all 1-year-old barrels from our top white. And the red spends 18 months in barrel with, again, 1 or 2 years. After 2 years, the barrels go elsewhere. They don't have anything to do with these ranges.
And so that's range 1, and then we've got this range with the amazing label designs, bottle shapes, and all the bits and pieces. Can you run us through through these 5 wines?
Yeah, 7th Heaven, the Chardonnay. This range is around 3 tonnes a hectare, and the Chardonnay is in 100% new oak for 15 months. It may sound excessive, but in fact, I don't think you can see the oak in it. The reds are all, the first 3 reds are 75% new oak for about 8 or 20 months, in fact. Double Happy is 100% new oak for 20 months as well. They, again, these are cropped around 3 tonnes a hectare. The reason that they can take a fair bit of oak is all seasoned for 3 to 5 years, so a very long seasoning time. And we purposely choose it so the oak character doesn't come up very strongly at all, but it adds just a bit of finesse in the wines. They shouldn't taste, I don't think they're very oaky at all. So they spend...
Sorry, you've got the Mountain Dragon is the Merlot, Jade Moon is Cab Franc, Magic Monkey is a Shiraz blend, and Double Happy is a Cabernet blend. Is that right?
Yeah, they all have blends around about 10%, but they fit into about 85, so they're called straight varietals as such.
Fantastic. And
yeah, so
how long have you been making them, Philip? How many vintages have you had under the belt?
I started in 2015, but didn't really. 2016, the first time we built a totally separate winery and just bought best equipment we could buy. Keep it very simple. We use a hydraulic press, in fact, which does an amazing job. We use that for whites and reds.
Let's change tack. If you weren't in wine, what would you be doing?
Oh, fishing or something. Chef.
So you would have been a professional fisherman? Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'd like to do is paint, but I'm a shithouse painter, so no. So doing something, climbing a mountain. I've got lots of interests, but I have very little time to complete
them. You've had a very long and illustrious career in the industry, Australian and international. Can you tell us about your favourite wine memory?
No. Yeah, I've been making this for 62 years. Been a winemaker since I was 12. Well, I started making wine, not a winemaker at 12. Mucking around with wine. I guess after 62 years, we begin to forget things. But I think working at Rosemount was always a phenomenal thing. It had a totally free hand and did a lot of travelling and made wine in lots of different places. And I found that fascinating. I spent a fair bit of time in China. Like that, I'm not sure about it at the moment, but anyway, we'll see how it all turns out.
And tell us, Philip, when you're in the car and you're driving between Sydney and Hoosegg, what's playing on the radio? What's your music taste? What are your artists? Your playlist? Your favourite?
I suppose that's changed. Being always fairly deaf, I can hear you at the moment. Music's not been a strong thing for me, but I'm mainly listening to classical, which probably half I find terrible and half I can listen to.
Fair enough. We won't talk about the guitar that's sitting over here on my shoulder.
I can see that.
Tell us, Philip, the best place for people watching and listening at home to get on to Hoosegg. Is it straight through the website? Do they find them in the trade?
Through our website. It's the easiest for Cabernet Cellars in Sydney, or if you locally, the restaurants. Orange has fabulous restaurants, and we've got several shop outlets as well, and a place called Ferment and Lane Cellar.
Hoosegg.com.
So online's probably easiest.
Yep.
Well,
excellent. All right.
Depends where you are, Cabernet Cellars.
I'm going to let you get on with the rest of your day. It's been really entertaining and thought-provoking having a chat with you. I'm so pleased that you're our first person on the podcast and on the video, and it's been a great honour having a chat with you, and I look forward to meeting you in person when I finally get over the Blue Mountains and out to Orange. Philip, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure, Ross. I'll see you here. Love to see you.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, that's it for episode number 1 of the Global Fine Wine podcast and video series. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Philip Shaw of Hoosegg. For more podcasts or upcoming podcasts and the list of who we're going to be interviewing, check out the website at globalfine.wine and anzbws.com.au, and we'll see you the next episode.